So after all that, we knew what the problems were. We knew we needed to do something. We had some leadership in place to identify some solutions, and that's where we really started to go through transformation. And I say you could feel it in the organization. I would say it was almost a touchable thing that we were changing the way we were doing business and how we were prospecting our students and working with them. So again, kind of maybe sometimes fluffy words, but these are the things that really stood out to us. We wanted to be systematic and have a system that would help us do that and really address our CRM and prospecting issues in that way. And transparent, that was huge for us because you can imagine with 150 some locations, at those locations, Joe would come in and say, I want to know about your project management degree. Their prospecting was maybe on a pad of paper, and then it was on a desk somewhere. There's no transparency at a campus when that happens. You don't know what the conversations are. You don't know what the student's interest is or what their life circumstance is, or do they need financial aid, or when do they want to start. None of those things are clear at all. And also with transparency is accountability. So we didn't have accountability. People weren't prospecting. A lot of people basically said, well, everybody who comes here just applies. We're not really. We wish. That would be nice, but that's not the case. And I think more and more so, people are shopping around a lot more. Even though we're niche, I think they do. On military bases, if anybody's been at those locations, it's school after school after school. And we would be foolish to think that they're not stopping at each of them to find out what's going on. But we can never reach out to those students and those prospects if we don't know they existed in our ecosystem somewhere. So that was the transparency and accountability, I think, was a huge opportunity for us. So to talk about our solution, I want to turn it over to Bill.
Very good. Thank you, Becky. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our transformation and some of the examples of the transformation as we went through this. So the problems were quite clearly identified. I arrived at the institution a little less than 3 years ago with these problems kind of there on the plate. I had some knowledge of the institution, but not on the adult side where we're working now. So we went about this systematic, transparent, accountable approach, and we started to, number one, change the organizational structure. So I inherited a very traditional enrollment management group that was not plugged into marketing at all, that was not, as Becky mentioned, very sales driven. We can use that word amongst ourselves. We wouldn't say that to the provost or anybody. But we made some very conscious investments in technology and reshaping that organizational design. Also within that organizational reshaping, we did a lot of policy morphing and warping to make sure that we got those accountability measures in there. And then the foundation of this on the technology side was for us to get very serious about prospect management and to do a full comprehensive implementation of CRM, which is Intelliworks in our case, through all of our 150 campuses, through our headquarters operation, and really through anybody in the organization that touched prospective students. The other cornerstone was for us to solve that we're only open from 8 to 5 Eastern time problem. How are we going to reach out to students 24/7, both from an inbound perspective when they needed help and an outbound proactive strategy where we could connect to folks and answer those 1 or 2 questions they needed to hear answers to or have reassurance with as they made their decision. So really all my comments for the next 20 minutes are going to somehow dovetail into our organizational reshaping, our CRM implementation, and I'm going to share some of our secret sauce with you in our CRM and how we operate that, and then at our 24/7 Ops Center, which is operated by Blackboard Student Services. So firstly, the organization. We took some of these words we all know so well as enrollment professionals and kind of branded them into the organization itself. And we made sure that everybody's job description, especially directors and managers, they realized that all of them had something to do with attracting, enrolling, retaining, and ultimately graduating students. Some people are more attuned to attracting the students. Some people are obviously more attuned into graduating the students. But we wanted to realize that everybody was part of this continuum. So we actually started to plug together a lot of the different parts of the organization that I didn't necessarily have control of at that particular moment of time when I joined the institution, and we built those around these pillars. So for instance, the marketing and our new department, enrollment operations, I'll explain in a moment, they're more attracting and enrolling students, while our financial aid folks and our retention and student success folks are retaining and graduating students. But this was a complete realignment of what people did when they came to work and how they were an important part of making sure students got through the entire life cycle. As Becky mentioned, and you guys mentioned in your poll, you have some staffing issues. You need more staff. We were in the same boat. We're still in the same boat. However, we leveraged technology. We leveraged some partnerships to help us get a little bit more, actually a lot more work out of what we needed to do on a daily basis. So prospect management. I want to share with you just a bit on what we're doing in the prospect management world. At the starting point, in the beginning, it was a very dark place. And we were very reactive, to use that term again. Students, we're lucky that we have 150 locations, and we're lucky that we have a very, very great reputation, great brand within the aviation and aerospace industry. That means we sit back and we enjoy tons of stealth applicants, people that walk in and say, I've known about Embry-Riddle since I was a kid, and I know this is exactly what I need to do to move up within the aerospace or aviation industry. But we were not documenting any of that. So CRM implementation, we went through an RFP process, chose Intelliworks, partnered with our technology team, and went down the road and started putting it to use. So targeted communications, both email that the system is launching out automatically and in a very targeted fashion. Phone, we realized that email was not the silver bullet, that we needed to have some human interaction with these folks as well. Even if they had walked in and dealt with us face-to-face at a campus, there was still a mechanism that we used the CRM to remind us to go out and do phone calling of these folks. And we also still use some traditional snail mail. And that's based on whether the person interacting with that student feels like we need to give them a little bit more there. We built our prospect management philosophy on this very simple. Anybody that's been in sales, you're going to know probably the cold, warm, hot distinctions there. And what we did, organizationally, there was a little bit of pushback when we said we're going to have customer relationship management and we're going to proactively reach out to students. And so everybody was gunning at me, saying that we were going to recreate a for-profit type environment at a nonprofit institution, and that wasn't the case. So what we did, I'm going to share with you kind of how we walk our students through this process. Anybody that fills out a request for information through the web or at a landing page, or they call in through the 800 number and they talk to somebody and we generate a prospect record for them, a contact record for them rather, they drive in as warm. They're a warm prospect. We do not buy any names at Embry-Riddle. All warm leads are a result of word-of-mouth marketing or some sort of activity that we've put in place in the marketing realm. And we have ways to track where those warm things are coming from, but that's a whole other presentation. So warm, they drive in, they're put in that prospect warm category, and they stay there for 60 days. They start to get messages based on their program of interest, based on their geography, based on the modality of learning that they're going to pursue their degree, that they're primarily going to pursue their degree with, and we work with them for 60 days. Also, in day 2, day 3 of that relationship, they're getting a phone call out from our operations center, and hopefully we're answering, as I said before, those 1 or 2 questions that they have designed to move them on to the application stage. If after 60 days, in this we're kind of really close relationship with them in those 60 days, a lot of email, a lot of things coming from Embry-Riddle their way, but if after 60 days we have not turned them into an applicant, we're actually going to, that's hot. So if we turn them into an applicant, they're a hot app started, and they're off, and they're actually going to be worked more closely. But if they don't do that, they're going to move up to the cold category. We're going to back off. We're not going to bother them. We're not going to pressure them. They're just not ready. And what we generally find out is most of those folks tell us, no, I'm not ready to start right now. I want to start in whatever month. I'm going to be deployed. I'll be back. I've got a job on my shoulders. We want to back off. We don't want to appear too strong-armed with them. So they go up to the cold category, and they actually hang out there in the system for up to a year. And during that year, they're going to get a touch about every 30 days. but they're more high-level touches. They're more press release type things, things that are of interest to them as someone that's involved in aviation aerospace. Just kind of news tidbits that have a little bit of an Embry-Riddle angle to them, just so they keep us in the back of their mind. And what we find, actually, after doing this now for about 2 years, is that we have a pretty significant amount of those cold prospects that convert down to the bottom of the page, back to actually submitting an application. But we've backed off. We're not bothering them. We're doing, I think, what we should be doing as a not-for-profit institution as Embry-Riddle. So they stay up there for a year, and if after a year they're still up there, they go off further to the right there in what we call the house list. And the house list just becomes a repository of prospects or people that were once prospects that somehow still we keep engaged with the institution. They're going to get a message even more infrequently than the cold list, than the prospect cold list. And what we find, once again, is a significant number of those individuals that receive a communication about every 60 days or more from us that actually convert into applications. But more importantly, what we know about this group, which numbers right now around 100, 120,000, I believe, is that 38% of them on average take the communication that we're sending to them and forward it on to somebody else. They're actually our word-of-mouth marketers. They're folks that somehow came and found Embry-Riddle at some point in time because they were interested in us as a niche institution, that they're sharing information with their friends. So that's actually, I think, one of our greatest assets. We keep them alive in the system. We can segment them out if we're opening a new location. We can segment them out by company, by whatever, and launch things out to them. But we never get rid of our prospects in the system. So the idea with all of that activity up the cold level, that it drives them back to a re-engaged prospect, and hopefully eventually back down into that hot category as well. So this is kind of high level what happens in our prospect management system, in our CRM system, and how we are trying to push people through, I think in a very professional, above board way, down into that application started scenario.